Recap Manhwa. The story kicks off with a young woman named Edith Rigelhoff walking down the aisle of the RX toward the altar, where her lover is already waiting. From a formal perspective, it should have been a flawless ducal wedding, but nah. The girl was super stressed about everything, trying to chill mentally, cause she knew she shouldn't be worried. Walking down the aisle, Edith noticed the guests' eyes at the ceremony were straight up, showing disgust, contempt, and arrogance toward her. Still, some were looking at her with this insatiable, lust-filled, crazy desire vibe. As she got closer to her lover, Edith thought about how this whole normal wedding scene had zero joy or happiness. No matter how hard she tried, it just wasn't there. So the couple approached the altar where the priest stood, who solemnly kicked off the wedding ceremony. At that moment, Edith mentally apologized to the priest, cause she knew none of her wishes were gonna come true. Meanwhile, the priest read a prayer, asking for blessings on the handsome man and beautiful woman. After all, the girl told herself mentally that today she'd marry the dude who despised her and would eventually slit her throat. But she understood that, like before, misfortune would surely find someone as helpless as her. Next, the story flashes back to the past, where a girl climbing stairs is stopped by a boy demanding money from her, which shocks her. She asks if he's playing games again, and that answer pissed the boy off. Then he asked if she'd forgotten who was still alive, to which she replied that incident was ages ago. With those words, she made the boy even angrier. During their talk, the girl found herself at the edge of the stairs while the boy kept pressuring and demanding money. In the end, she asked if he remembered how much money he'd borrowed, then added, if he could pay it back. Those words finally pissed the boy off, and he got close to her, calling her a nasty name and pushing her down the stairs. After the senseless death that marked the end of the girl's miserable day, she was reborn in Edith Rigelhoff's body. After a while, when she approached the mirror and saw her new self, the girl was shocked because she didn't get who she was dealing with. At that moment, with desperation in her chest, she dropped to her knees and silently asked herself if this was really a soul transmigration. After a few seconds, she heard a knock on the door. It was the maid, who came to ask her mistress Edith if she'd forgotten what day it was. The girl was surprised to hear her new name, cause she realized she was inside a novel she'd read the night before called Relinquish Obsession. Suddenly, the girl remembered Liz Sinclair, the illegitimate daughter of the Count, a bright and innocent girl, also as beautiful as the goddess of spring. In the end, it turned out that because of her origins, the girl was attacked by the Count's family and had a very unhappy childhood, after which she caught the attention of the Ludwig couple and went to live with them in the duchy. However, when she got there, all she found was fierce, no-holds-barred competition to win their hearts. That's when the obsession starts, as the title of the story suggests. In the end, Edith Rigelhoff's role was that of a simple, greedy, dumb thief. Blinded by love and poisoned by jealousy, she was always the one pulling every kind of sabotage to hurt Liz, because Edith was the type of thief whose mischief on Liz's path was easily dealt with. Meanwhile, newlywed Edith sat down in a chair waiting for the maids to help her. Meanwhile, thinking Edith was from the story, she was blinded by jealousy and did everything to kill Liz, especially since Edith didn't care about money because she grew up in the Count's family with a very loving father. After a few minutes, the maid turned her mistress toward the mirror and told her everything was ready. Meanwhile, Edith was pleasantly surprised by the maid's work when she saw herself. At the same time, the maid told her lady that most likely the master was already waiting for her, to which the girl turned and thanked the maid for everything right then and there. Edith got up from her chair and ran to the door while the maid stood there deeply surprised and amazed. Hearing her lady's words of thanks as she ran down the hall, the girl thought the only thing she had to do was fix Edith's mistakes, especially since the girl remembered the plot of the play really well. So this shouldn't be a super tough test for her. In the end, she smiled and told herself this time she might just score the family's love for free. Yeah, for sure, she was acting real good. Right then, the girl finally got to her dad's room. Then, opening the door, she wished her dad good morning with a big smile, but it didn't take long for her hopes to get crushed. After all, her dad saw his daughter and heard her good morning wish, and got mad, asking if she didn't think it was way too late to be calling at this time in the morning. Then he called her slow, and those words really pissed off the girl, while her dad asked why she showed up so late and ordered her to shut the door behind her until suddenly the girl got surprised because she received a notification saying it was Edith Rigelhoff number 13 and that identity verification was complete. At the same moment, she got another notification indicating that memory data sync was starting right then. After that, the girl headed to some portal. At the same time, she saw a scene where Edith was on her knees apologizing to her dad, saying she was wrong and wouldn't make those mistakes again. Meanwhile, the girl looked at Edith and didn't get what was going on, because turns out the arrogant, shameless thief was just an image after all. They mocked her and treated her like low-class trash once, even locked her in the basement and begged to be freed because she understood everything. One day, her brother came up to her and said she had to pay for being fed and raised. After that, Edith was shocked and scared out of her mind, because to everyone, the girl was just a walking billboard for her family, decked out in fancy dresses and expensive jewels, but at home she got beat up and humiliated by the servants. After all, she was the Count Rigelhoff's most prized doll. Suddenly, the girl approached the beaten and tortured Edith. Then Edith asked her how she saw it, and then asked if the girl could handle it. That question scared the young girl. Right then, the dad snapped at Edith and slammed the table, yelling at her, then added that she hadn't been in her right mind since morning. Finally calming down a bit, the man told her they didn't have the right to mess up today, because they couldn't let the Ludwig family notice even the tiniest flaw. Because of this, the girl felt torn, not knowing what to do next until suddenly the man asked if she remembered. The contract's contents then stressed she had to bring 3 maids with her before moving to the next step. In the end, Edith had no choice but to agree with her dad's words, then wondered why her family was the same as in her past life. After a while, the girl and the count, accompanied by the butler, were outside. Meanwhile, she thought she should double-check the info, because the current Duke Ludwig and Count Rigelhoff had been rivals since childhood. It turned out that at that moment the power of these 2 families was almost equal, but still the Ludwig family made a huge contribution to the war and got the Duke title. However, Count Rigelhoff believed the dukedom was stolen right under his family's nose, so he married off his daughter, Edith, to gather info that could destroy the dukedom. Thinking about all this made the girl really sad. Then she started to calm down because so far everything was fine, but still Edith realized she needed to turn all this into an opportunity. In the end, it turned out that the girl knew how to find ways to survive in tough situations, and so she understood that if she didn't act like Edith from the original work, she could definitely survive somehow. However, the girl knew that in almost every novel, where the heroine turns into a thief, there's some kind of crisis from the start, so she decided that today she had to act differently than Edith in the original story. When she arrived at the place, the girl saw the insane beauty and size of the estate in front of her, and she was shook by the grandeur of the building. At the same time, she wondered why Count Rigelhoff wasn't chill around the Ludwigs while meanwhile the father was talking to his son. After which the young man said the estate looked as dope as ever. To that his dad said he didn't see the point in all this flashy luxury because it was totally empty inside. As they approached the building, the men were greeted by a butler who welcomed them and said the Duke and Duchess were already waiting inside, then added he'd lead the men to them. Hearing this, the Count smiled, then turned to his daughter and in a kind tone asked her to quickly come along. At the same time, the Count held out his hand and Edith felt embarrassed because she was surprised at how fast the Count's attitude toward her had changed so drastically. In the end, the girl had no choice but to accept her dad's offer, after which she thought that after all she was leaving this place in a week anyway, so she needed to find a way to survive in the Ludwig's world, the main stage for the plot development. After a few seconds, the butler led Count Rigelhoff and his family to the hall where the Duke and Duchess were sitting, then introduced them to the Count's family. Meanwhile, Edith, seeing all this, was pleasantly surprised because she realized she could finally see with her own eyes the characters, whose looks she had only imagined by reading the book's description. After that, the girl wondered if they were really Duke Axel Ludwig and Duchess Jocelyn Ludwig. Meanwhile, the Duchess smiled sweetly and thanked the Rigelhoff family for making such a journey, then emphasized that the table setup would soon be done and they could eat. After all, Edith looked at a guy named Cliff who was the main character of the story. At the same time, she was convinced he was insanely handsome. She also noticed his eyes were golden, like they were about to melt. Then her gaze landed on Liz Sinclair, after which Edith told herself that this girl really looked like a spring goddess because she was stunning. Then Edith looked at the man sitting next to Liz and realized he was probably her future husband. Looking at him, the girl literally drooled over his looks. At the same time, she wondered if she was falling for him, then told herself she finally got why. Edith clung to him so hard, the girl mentally started describing him, noticing his straight, sharp nose and the jawline that gave off a proud vibe. Then she looked down and noticed the man's broad chest, slim waist and hips, after which she wondered how someone could even be that beautiful. At the same time, Edith realized she didn't look that good herself, so she decided it was time to pull herself together and stop staring so hard at her husband, because he wouldn't be looking at her anyway. After a few seconds, the meal began. The young woman tried the dishes brought by the waiters. However, her father started a speech and said his heart wasn't at ease, then asked the Dukes how they could send their daughter like this. At the same time, Edith realized that things were finally kicking off. Suddenly, the Count put his hand on his daughter's shoulder and told her he wanted her to take some maids with her, because in his opinion, his daughter Edith would feel more comfortable with those who had cared for her for a long time. To this, the Duchess, Jocelyn, smiled awkwardly and said her maids were unbeatable. At the same time, the Count Rigelhoff asked if Duchess Louisa hadn't brought any maid when she got married after those words. An oppressive silence fell over the room because no one there knew how to react right then. Edith understood that this request from Count Rigelhoff was one of those you just can't say no to, no matter how much you want to, but still. The girl mentally told the Duchess not to stress too much about it, and finally she smiled and told her dad everything would be fine, then turned to the Duke and begged him to forget the request, adding that she was getting married super young, which was why her dad was so worried about the whole thing. These words caught Count Rigelhoff off guard. After a while, when the Rigelhoff family gathered in their carriage, the Count started yelling at his daughter, telling her she'd lost her mind because not only did she not help, but she actually became the biggest obstacle. At the same time, Edith realized that this was really when the story was about to kick off. Then she turned to her dad and asked if he hadn't noticed Duke Axel's expression. She told her dad that the request was so obvious it made her tense, then added it was obvious to everyone. Why the Count had asked for the maids and finally asked her dad if this marriage was really right, shouldn't it have cleared up his doubts, recap Manhwa? Hearing his daughter's speech, Count Rigelhoff was speechless for a moment, but still gathering his strength. He asked his daughter what she could do if she was there alone. Edith asked her dad to think carefully about going alone, then told the Count that if she was there alone, nothing would happen. And besides, the ducal family would actually chill on their watch while Edith and the Count talked. The girl's brother was thinking about the beautiful Liz when suddenly the girl said she needed to clear all suspicions ASAP. Then she emphasized that once she earned their trust, she'd fake feeling homesick or ask them to bring her maid for a little while. Hearing this, the man started thinking about his daughter's words and she in turn asked him to trust her. From that day on, Edith walked on a knife's edge for a whole week. But finally she stood there in a wedding dress next to her future husband, listening to the priest's prayer. Still, the girl was happy because she knew she wouldn't have to go back to that house anymore. After a few seconds, the priest finished the prayer. Then he asked the couple to face each other and turned to God Hershan, and asked him to bless the newlyweds' wedding rings as well as the eternal pact sealed in them next. The priest said that after exchanging the wedding rings, the ritual would be complete, and after a few seconds, 2 kids carried the newlyweds' rings on a lush pillow while Edith watched and admired them. Suddenly, she felt her husband Kylian's eyes on her, then mentally told him she knew how he felt right now. So she wanted them to hurry up and get this over with ASAP. At the end, when the boy put a wedding ring on Edith's finger, she felt a little embarrassed because she saw he was uncomfortable even with the lightest touch. Suddenly, something caught her attention and the girl was surprised. In the end, it turned out that Kylian took the wedding ring and then put it on himself. At that moment, laughter erupted in the hall, growing louder as it went on, and Edith, meanwhile, stayed frozen, not knowing what to do next. After a few seconds, she pulled herself together and mentally told herself that nothing had changed because anyway, he didn't care about her at all. Suddenly, Edith leaned over to the girl and patted her head, then thanked them for bringing the wedding rings, while Kylian stood there watching everything without saying a word. However, when the girl stood up and stood next to him, the boy looked at her like he was about to burn her right there standing in front of the altar. Edith thought about the fact that she finally had a life where she could take her time and enjoy peace. Because now she could focus on her hobbies without fearing getting hit by her dad or older brother, the girl mentally asked that no one bother her. Because when she was reborn, she finally felt truly alive when she got out of bed. She told herself that her dress was way too low cut, which worried her, and that her heels were way too high for her, after which she decided she had to do better. Edith suddenly liked it. Someone knocked on her bedroom door, after which Edith let them in, but when she heard who it was, she was even a little surprised. It turned out to be Lady Liz, and when Edith saw her, she asked the girl if something had happened. To which Liz looked at Edith and shyly said in a sad tone that she wanted to tell her something right then. The girl was shocked because at that moment she realized that this episode had already happened before. Right after the wedding, it turned out that in that episode Liz visits Edith, after which she wants to apologize for Kylian's rude behavior, but the young beauty's apology, on the contrary, made Edith even more furious. After all, just like she couldn't blame cold Kylian, all her anger spilled over onto poor Liz. At that moment, Edith thought she finally understood why the Edith from the original story was so upset, after which she told herself she had no reason to be mad at this little blonde goddess. In the end, sweet Liz turned to Edith and said she wanted to apologize for Kylian's bad manners, adding that she hoped the girl wasn't too offended by him. After all, he might seem cold on the outside, but he's actually a guy with a warm heart. Meanwhile, Edith looked at the young girl admiringly, then wondered to herself how she could hate such a tiny beauty. Suddenly, the girl started describing Liz in her mind, and at the same time, she noticed Liz's shiny, bright blonde locks as well as her big, light blue eyes, which were pure and innocent. In the end, Edith noted to herself that a girl with such a cute look and a kind, honest heart must be in any story. Finally, Edith looked at the young beauty, then smiled and told the girl not to worry, because she understood everything perfectly, then added that in her opinion, it seemed like both of them were going through a tough time, because this marriage was arranged by their families, which is why Edith told Liz not to hold a grudge against Kylian. These words really surprised the young beauty, after which she looked at Edith with her beautiful yet surprised eyes, trying to say something, and meanwhile Edith thought that if she did everything right, then her survival chances in the duchy would go up quite a bit. After a few seconds, Liz hugged herself and, flashing a sweet smile, told Lady Edith she was very kind and pretty mature, which made Edith admire the young goddess even more. Then she told Liz that she still wasn't a match for her, and also said that the girl had a pretty dress that looked really good on her. Edith's words made Liz very embarrassed. At that moment, Liz, confused, said she must have bothered Edith, after which she started apologizing and said Edith must be really tired. Seeing all this, Edith told herself Liz was so cute she wanted to hug her, but still smiled, and asked the young beauty to get some rest too, then said goodbye. A few seconds later, when the young blonde left the room, Edith sighed with relief and wondered if the wedding episode was finally over. Then she told herself that since she was alone now, she could rest a bit. After that, the girl decided to take a bath, and when she lay down in it, she immediately felt the water temperature, after which she told herself that this hot water really made her feel alive. In the end, Edith told herself that since she was the future duke's wife, she didn't need to think about bathing because the servants did that. Then she told herself she didn't care about the lack of internet, because now she didn't have to work or clean the house, plus she didn't have to worry about the bank account or the manager, etc. After that, she relaxed and started enjoying the hot bath to the max, while thinking about how busy she'd be attending Opera's house contests, all kinds of picnics, parties, and dances. Suddenly, Edith was surprised because suddenly he heard someone entering the room. Turns out it was his husband Kylian, who called her a ruthless babe. Since she started showering alone even though her fiancé was MIA, the kid's look caught me off guard big time. Because in the OG book, the kid never barged into the bride's room. Kylian got mad as hell at that reaction. After that, he asked the girl why she looked so shook, then added if someone else was supposed to come through. To that, Edith clumsily said she thought he wouldn't come. Then the kid told her she was pretty sharp. After that, the girl said it couldn't be any other way, cause at the wedding ceremony, he didn't even give her the chance to rock a wedding ring, so she couldn't help but catch on to something. Suddenly, Kylian leaned over the girl and asked if she expected him to pull some weird flirting moves and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Edith was thinking to herself that Kylian was driving her nuts. He was so damn sexy and at the same time a total idiot. After all, the girl got that she had no reason to hate Kylian, much less the energy to be mad, so she told the kid she was just laying out the facts. Then she added it was pretty obvious he wouldn't be in that room after the way he acted. What she heard shocked the kid, and he asked Edith if she was gonna crash in that bathroom. After that, he suddenly turned and started walking out of the room. Kylian's move caught Edith totally off guard, and she wondered why he even came there in the first place. Walking down the hall, the kid suddenly heard someone call his name, which made him stop and check who it was. Turns out it was young Liz, who asked Kylian surprised if he'd been in the bride's room. The kid said yes, then added that Edith had zero expectations for tonight. That answer shocked the young beauty, who asked what all that meant. Kylian then said Edith had locked herself in the bathroom and was taking a nap, which shocked Liza even more. She said Lady Edith was safe, but before she could finish, Kylian came up, put his hand on her head, smiled, and said he thought highly of everyone. He added that everyone knew what kind of man Count Rigelhoff was, then asked Liza to really think if the people in that family were serious or just messing with them. At the end, he told the young beauty that in that way, that family was just clowning on them. At that moment, Liz got shocked and shyly said if that was true. Then Lady Edith's words. But again, Liz couldn't finish her thought because Kylian, surprised, asked what exactly Edith had told her. Meanwhile, the young beauty looked away and told the kid Lady Edith just complimented her dress, and she blushed right away at the compliment. Kylian got embarrassed hearing that and then asked Lisa why. Edith had criticized her for a dress she didn't even pick. At that moment, Liz was super shocked hearing that from him, then told him Edith never said that. Then she asked the kid if it was possible she was just upset. Kylian smiled hearing that question, then told the young beauty to think about the dress Edith was wearing. At the end, the kid asked if that wasn't why Edith reacted like that because she saw such a cheap and trashy dress. After that, Kylian said Edith was acting indecent. Hearing this, Liz was shocked big time. Even more shocked, then asked the kid how he could call his own wife obscene. After hearing Lisa's accusation, Kylian said he was being pretty brutal and then asked if she had anything else to say. Suddenly, their chat got cut off by Cliff, who was hyped to see Kylian. After hearing Lisa's accusation, Kylian said it was pretty savage and then asked if she had anything else to say. Suddenly, their conversation was cut off by Cliff, who was hyped to see Kylian because he'd been looking for him, then asked why they were here and what they were doing since it was already pretty late. Seeing the kid, Laisa's face lit up with insane joy and her beautiful smile spread across her face. Meanwhile, Kylian stayed silent, not knowing what to say back. The next day, Edith woke up in her bed and was surprised that even after all the agony she went through yesterday, she could wake up on time. After all, she felt great. And then she told herself that's the real strength of a healthy girl, suddenly sitting on the edge of the bed, thinking that since she had a healthy body, she'd think positively, and then told herself that if she pulled it off, she could even live as a super cute daughter-in-law. Finally, she got out of bed and walked to the window, telling herself Kylian was a minor character who turned out to be head over heels for Lisa. At the same time, Edith wondered if the kid's parents might be different from him. Meanwhile, the girl thought if Duke and Duchess Ludwig, who warmly welcomed Liz into their family, could also open their hearts to her because during the first meeting, the vibe at the estate wasn't great. After thinking about that, Edith smiled and told herself she should congratulate them first. After a while, the girl thought one of the main survival rules in a novel about reincarnating into a villain's body is of course earning the trust of the main and side characters in the story. After that, she told herself that if she really wanted to survive in the Duke Ludwig family, then the opinions of the Duke and Duchess themselves mattered way more than Kylian's own opinion. Suddenly, she thought the one thing she wanted most was to enjoy delicious food and a chill life somewhere in a corner of this estate. At the same time, Edith told herself that to make her wish come true, she definitely needed to earn the trust of the Ludwigs, especially since no mother-in-law would hate a daughter-in-law who came to greet her. Early in the morning, the day after the wedding, she suddenly saw a bell attached to the wall. So she walked over and curiously grabbed its rope, then told herself it was the same bell with a rope she'd only read about in books. Then she thought that with the help of the maids, it wouldn't be hard to transform into a legit daughter-in-law. After ringing the bell, Edith saw a servant enter the room a few seconds later who asked his lady if she had called for him, to which Edith told him to prepare her before leaving. After a few seconds, Edith asked her maid what her name was, to which the maid told her lady she was named Anna. At the same moment, Edith asked Anna if all the clothes she brought from the previous estate were flashy and tacky, to which the maid didn't hesitate for a second, and answered yes. At the same time, the girl thought that if she wore something like that, no one would be happy for her, so Edith felt super embarrassed. After these thoughts, she went back to the maid and asked her to go to the workshop to ask the tailors to sew the dress so the chest would be covered, and also to ask them to get rid of those disgusting decorations. Of course, the maid had no choice but to leave except to agree to her mistress's request. However, such actions from the servant surprised Edith, after which she reflected on the fact that the maid went to do everything she told her without any order from her. After which the girl told herself that just as she thought the maids in Rigelhoff were pretty weird, At the same time, she grabbed another dress and told herself the rest of the dresses would need to be redone too. Then suddenly she looked at the bed and remembered last night was the first wedding night, after which she wondered if she should leave some bloodstains on the bed. However, Edith immediately dismissed those thoughts, because she understood that if she did that herself, Kylian definitely wouldn't be happy. After all, just like in the original work, Kylian was ready to devote himself fully to Lisa. After these thoughts, Edith smiled and told herself that a virgin handsome guy was really something else. Then she wondered if it would be too much to impose her affection on a minor character. Suddenly, she wondered why Kylian even came to see her yesterday anyway, and then she wondered if he just wanted to start a fight. But she sighed because whatever it was super nice for her to just look at his handsome face twice. One day, right at that moment, Edith was approached by a maid who interrupted her lady's daydream, after which she told her everything was ready, which surprised Edith since she didn't think things would move that fast. Realizing what had just happened, the girl told herself she must have lost her mind because she had already decided, even before Kylian, that he wouldn't be interesting to her, and yet for some reason she started thinking about him. After a while, Edith arrived at the Duke couple's room and with a sweet smile, told them she came to say hi and asked if they'd slept well that night. Meanwhile, Axel and Jocelyn Ludwig admired their new daughter-in-law. Suddenly, the Duchess turned to Edith and said she must have been pretty tired yesterday. But despite that, she still came to greet them in the morning, then told her sister-in-law she was worried, because she seemed way too nervous. To this, the girl said she was totally fine right then. The girl sat on the couch, then smiled because she saw a cup of tea on the table and thought that cup was for her. But still, she thought about what the Duke couple had told her earlier, that Kylian hadn't slept with her after all. When Edith took the teacup in her hands, Duke Axel turned to her and said, as far as he knew, Count Rigelhoff raised her like his own beloved daughter, then asked her if she knew anything about handling things as the lady of an aristocratic house. Hearing this question, the girl wasn't confused. On the contrary, she was glad because she had all the memories of Edith, after which she told the Duke she knew how to manage the budget, handle paperwork, and work with documents. Then added that in the duchy things might be done a bit differently, but still, she added that if they taught her quickly, she'd learn everything. Meanwhile, the Duke watched her closely and listened to everything she said, then told Edith it seemed like Count Rigelhoff had taught her how to do it. Only that faced with that answer, the girl went into a daze. However, she reflected on the fact that as she thought recap Manhwa, the attitude towards her wouldn't be totally favorable, but she was surprised the Duke spoke to her so harshly, like she was some kind of thief who came to steal documents. In the end, Edith turned to the Duke and said that if she didn't deserve his trust, he should teach her something else, especially since she'd do her best. However, Duchess Jocelyn approached her and told her Count Rigelhoff had taught her very well, then said she could help her in 2 weeks and added that if she needed anything, she shouldn't be shy. And said it now. To this, Edith thanked her and asked the Duchess if she could put someone in her place. Like how could she introduce the property to her, which surprised the Duchess, after which she said by Kylian, but immediately realized her mistake and said she'd find a good guide for Edith alongside her. The girl thought about what the Duchess wanted from someone who hadn't even spent the night in the bridal chamber. On the first wedding night, when the Duchess finished, Edith said she had to go, then got up and left to the hall. At that very moment, she let out a sigh of relief because during the conversation with the Dukes, she'd run out of breath and almost died right there and then. Someone approached her and asked if she was okay, which surprised the girl, but she still said she was fine, though a little worried. Meanwhile, she studied her interlocutor carefully, and then asked if he was the same guy Renan Filch. After getting a yes, Edith smiled and told Renan it was a pleasure to meet him, then asked the boy to take care of her. After all, the girl understood that the Duchess had ordered her to be introduced to the estate's assistant Duke's man, Renan Filch, who was the Duke's servant, and also responsible for handling his documents, as well as Anna, who was put in Edith's care. Renan wasn't mentioned in the original work, so the girl was a bit nervous being around people she had no info on. At that moment, Renan turned to Edith and asked if she'd like to take a tour of the estate right now, after which he added that he had a lot of work today, so he couldn't spend much time with the girl. Hearing this, she smiled sweetly and told the guy she was ready to start right now, thinking at the same time that sometimes it felt like this wasn't just a world inside a book, but an actual real-life reality. After walking down the hall with the guy Renan for a while, Edith wondered to herself if the characters who didn't appear in the original story really had to be that simple. In just a few seconds, the guy led Edith to the jewelry room, then told her that the family jewels of the duchy were kept there, which could be used for various ceremonial events. Then Renan took the girl to the room where the weapons and armor were stored, and told her that these things were mainly used only by His Grace the Duke and 2 other knights, and that the armor and weapons themselves were made by famous craftsmen. Edith was pleasantly surprised by what she saw. The next stop on this tour was the Grand Library, which was the heart of the duchy, housing tons of rare books of all kinds at the same time. Edith asked Renan if anyone could enter these places or if a special permission was still required, to which the guy told her that any family member could enter any time here. Then he added that they could also visit the Sistine Hall, where new artworks were displayed every month. This answer caught the girl's interest because in her past life she couldn't go to exhibitions since the ticket prices were way too high for her. But now she could visit a real museum right at home after a few minutes. Renan took the girl to the Sistine Hall. Seeing all the beauty of this hall, Edith was breathless because she couldn't say a word. At the same time, the guy told her that since this property was pretty big, he couldn't show her all the rooms today. So he asked her to stay here today, These words didn't bother the girl. In fact, she thanked the boy for such a tour, after which she added that she was pleasantly surprised by the beautiful place she now lived in. Suddenly, Edith told Renan he had a really nice voice and was pretty eloquent, so she didn't even notice how fast time flew by. What she said surprised the boy a lot because he didn't expect to hear that directed at him. In the end, the guy even blushed from the girl's words. But still, he told her he was just doing what he had to do, then said he'd show Edith the spots on the estate they hadn't visited yet, but the day after tomorrow. Hearing this offer, the girl happily agreed. After a while, when Renan and Edith passed another place, the boy decided to tell her about it too. Then he added that this place was a big terrace. Hearing this, the girl got surprised and asked again, so Renan told her that this particular spot was super convenient for watching the estate's courtyard. Meanwhile, the girl carefully took everything around in, then continued and said that this place was often used when guests came to the estate because His Grace Duke Axel really liked sitting on this terrace and chatting. Meanwhile, while Renan was telling Edith all this, Cliff, Liz, and Killian were sitting on the same terrace having tea and talking. But Killian couldn't take his eyes off his beloved Liz. In the end, Edith still saw how her husband acted around the girl. The guy noticed it too and felt embarrassed by the situation because he didn't know what to do. Renan pulled himself together and decided to call Mr. Killian, while Edith enjoyed the view completely. Unfazed by what she saw, suddenly the guy wondered out loud why the young knight was there. This question surprised Edith, after which she mentally told herself that Renan's surprise was pretty natural because how could a newly engaged boyfriend be having tea with another woman in the morning? At that very moment, the girl looked away and thought about what Edith would have done in the original story. Suddenly, she smiled pretty sweetly and told the guy that it really was a pretty beautiful place, and that it would be even more beautiful at the end of spring. When Renan heard this, he agreed with the lady at the same time. She told him she'd be coming here often herself, then suddenly turned and told Renan to bounce quick. Because like she said before, she had stuff to handle now. This lady's move caught him off guard, but he had no choice but to roll with it. After a bit, Renan showed up at Duke Axel's office, who asked what he could spill about Edith. Then the kid told the Count that the girl was all ears and surprisingly caught on fast to how the estate was set up, adding that Edith was way more into the 16-hall Duke. Listened up, then asked if Renan had noticed anything weird about her, to which Renan said nope, nothing sketchy, then told the Duke that despite all the rumors, Edith had been pretty damn respectable. Suddenly the guy told Duke Axel there'd been a rough incident when he and Edith were strolling the big terrace and ran into Lady Liz, who was sipping tea with two young knights. Hearing this, the Duke wasn't thrilled and told his guy to make sure there was no drama, especially since the Duke didn't want Edith seeing her fiancé flirting with some other chick the morning after their own wedding at the end. Duke Axel remembered telling his son he had to wait at least until the end of this year before Count Rigelhoff backed Archduke Langston. Then his son said he'd only be Edith's husband. On paper, nothing more. At the same time, Renan told his Duke that Miss Edith didn't even bat an eye at Killian's bold moves. Hearing this, Axel was straight up shocked. Then the guy told the Duke he wasn't sure what the girl was thinking, but instead of causing a scene, she just dipped like she didn't see a thing. Hearing this, Duke Axel thought it over and then said out loud that Edith Rigelhoff was one unusual chick. Meanwhile, Edith was having breakfast when her maid, Anna, came up and told her lady that if she finished eating, she'd clean up after her. So Edith thanked her maid but still felt kinda awkward then. Wondered if maybe she felt weird cause she was trying to eat solo at home, so it wasn't wild that she could just sit there and not help. Suddenly she turned to Anna and said she'd done pretty well today. Then Edith told her to go eat and that if she needed anything, she'd call her. After hearing this, the maid froze cause she'd never heard that kind of talk from noble folks before, but Anna bowed and thanked her lady, though Edith was already kinda stunned cause she knew those words could raise some eyebrows about her after that. The girl sighed in relief, cause in her eyes she'd made a good impression on Duke and Duchess Ludwig, so now she could chill a bit cause all that's left is figuring out how to deal with Liz. After all, Edith knew that Liz Sinclair was meant to be the main character in this world, but also knew Liz's life wasn't easy. Until she joined the Ludwig family. At the end, Sinclair's son and daughter constantly bullied Lisa, who was an illegitimate kid, and her home became a prison where she was always pushed down. Since the young beauty helped Duchess Louisa not fall off her mare, she caught the woman's eye, but when the Duke and Duchess found out about the harsh treatment of this kind girl, they got mad as hell after that. The ducal family decided to buy Lisa's custody rights for a fat stack from the Sinclair family. But the Sinclair fam, who quickly gave up Liz's guardianship, lost the chance to stay connected to the duchy, and after a while they went broke and regretted it. After all, by the end of the story, there's not a single good character with a bad ending. After all, by the end of the story, there isn't a single positive character with a bad ending. Except of course Edith Rigelhoff and the real-life girl who was reborn as Edith, we could say. Her life was full of all kinds of problems from start to finish, because during her year working at the company, her bosses abused their power multiple times. After that, she broke up with her boyfriend after a while, through text messages when she saw him going to a motel with another woman, after which she went home. And she just thought, now I'm only going to read novels online. Finally, the girl wondered what happened to Opa after he threw her down the stairs and she died. She wondered if her mom and dad were sad when they found out about her death, but still told herself that her parents were probably more worried about Opa than their own daughter who had died. After all, Edith understood that now she had to look out just for herself, not them. Looking out the window, Edith saw Liz sitting under a tree reading a book. Then she thought instead of avoiding the girl, she should actually go up to her and make friends. At that same moment, the young beauty was approached by Killian, who asked what she was reading. Liz told him she decided to read the history of the imperial family, justifying her choice, saying she never got the proper education. Suddenly she smiled and blushed, then shyly told the boy that since she didn't know much, it was pretty tough for Duke Axel to decide her future here. Kylian looked at his girl with a tender gaze. Then he said if she wanted practice, he'd be happy to help. After that, he asked Lisa to reach out to him if needed. Meanwhile, Edith watched this scene from her bedroom window. Then she told herself what she saw was pretty expected from a minor character. Also, she wondered what Cliff would say about anything one could experience and live to their satisfaction. Well, or something like that. Closing the window, Edith told herself she shouldn't eavesdrop on others' conversations, especially not get involved, until suddenly she heard Lisa ask Kylian where he left his wife and why he came alone. At that moment, Edith decided to keep listening to this convo. Then she heard her husband tell Lisa not to pay attention to that girl, referring to his wife, and then he told the girl Edith was just a hostage who'd stay on the estate for a while and then disappear. After hearing this, Edith decided to close the window. After that, she came to a conclusion about exactly what Kylian thinks of her. Meanwhile, in another county, the outraged Liz Sinclair, youngest daughter of Earl Sinclair, was losing her mind. At that same moment, Damien Sinclair, Layla's brother, appeared in the room. He asked his sister what happened, and she told him Edith Rigo married Kylian Ludwig. At this, the boy smiled because now he understood why his sister was so pissed off. Layla bit her nails and asked her brother why Kylian chose Edith. Then Damien told her the Ludwig Dukes probably have a hobby, which is collecting useless women. At that moment, Layla noticed how calmly her brother reacted to this. Then, outraged, she asked if he was having a lot of fun now, to which the boy said he didn't see the point in getting mad. After hearing her brother's words, she calmed down a bit, then asked if he knew anything. Finally, looking at Damien. Standing there with a smug look, Layla crossed her arms over her chest before telling her brother to hurry up and spill everything so she wouldn't waste her precious time. At this, the boy smiled. Then he told his sister she was as temperamental as ever, then asked why. Edith and Kylian got married anyway. What would both families gain from this? Who married off their kids? At that same moment, Damien himself answered her question, saying that Count Rigelhoff had the right to distribute the iron ore mined in the southern mines and therefore had the raw material for weapon manufacturing. Hearing this, Layla asked her brother. She had the raw materials for making weapons. Hearing this, Layla asked her brother why all this was so important and what the weapon's purpose was. He didn't expect that response from his sister. So hearing her, he laughed hard and then asked Layla if she even understood how power is divided now. After that, he added that power is currently split between Archduke Langston, who dreams of becoming emperor, and the imperial faction that currently supports the young emperor. Then Damien stressed that it would be super dangerous if the Archduke's side managed to manufacture weapons. Finally, the kid added that the Duchy of Louis, a key member of the emperor's faction, had to keep Count Rigelhoff in check so he wouldn't side with Langston. Hearing his brother's answer, Layla got even more pissed off, then told him he should have explained why that marriage was necessary, and finally asked if he was basically harassing her. Damien told his sister that everyone already knows, then said the real juicy stuff starts right now. At the same time, the kid shot his sister a wicked look and asked if Count Rigelhoff was really tied down now. After that, Damien told his sister that one day, while walking down the hall, he ran into Count Rigelhoff, who was scolding his daughter for not following his orders. Hearing all the dirt the Count threw at his daughter, the kid realized that the whole image of the arrogant thief Edith Rigelhoff was totally fake. After hearing that from his brother, Layla said that couldn't be true, to which the kid replied it's hard to believe. But everything went down exactly like he said. After that, Damien said now it's just a waiting game to see how things unfold, then added that if they drop this info at the right moment, Rigelhoff's toast. Meanwhile, at the Ludwig family estate, Renan gave Edith a tour, showing her another exit to the big terrace. The girl, surprised, said she'd been exploring the estate bit by bit, but it still took her a whole week to avoid getting caught. Suddenly, she told Renan she didn't know what to do now, and the guy said she didn't need to stress about that stuff. Then he told Edith that Duchess Jocelyn asked him to pass along she had a favor to ask of the girl. Hearing this, Edith literally lit up, her eyes shining with the happiness. Then she asked Renan if the Duchess really said that. Renan looked confused at the girl, who was almost crying with joy. It turned out Edith was happy about this info, because it was super hard for her to just sit around doing nothing all this time. However, the girl turned to Renan and pointed ahead, asking if the Duchess's office was that way, clarifying if it was the third door from the left. Then Edith smiled sweetly at Renan and said thanks to him she could now navigate this huge estate perfectly. After that, she thanked him and decided to ask if he was a good student. Renan looked away, adjusted his glasses, and told the girl it'd be a shame if she forgot all the info he'd been sharing all week. A few minutes later, Edith arrived at Duchess Jocelyn's room. When she opened the door, she saw that besides the Duchess herself, there was also a young beauty, Liz, who smiled immediately upon seeing Edith. Then she told the girl to come in faster. Entering the room, Edith approached the girl and smiled, then asked Lisa if they'd be working together. As soon as she got a yes, she immediately asked the young beauty to teach her everything she knew. Finally, at those words, young Liz blushed hard like a beet, then told Edith she should be glad her mistress trusted her to carry out the task. At the same time, Edith noticed the girl blushing, and in her mind called her cute. Meanwhile, Duchess Jocelyn was watching the conversation between the two young women, then cheerfully said she was glad they got along. To that, Edith blushed and started apologizing for not greeting her when she came in. In the end, the Duchess smiled and told the girl There was nothing to worry about, on the contrary, because she liked seeing them together. After that, Jocelyn turned to Liz and asked her to help. After a few minutes with the documents, Liz fulfilled her Duchess's request. Plus, she didn't do it alone since she had a new assistant studying the documents. With mad energy and focus, Duchess Jocelyn paced nervously around the room while the girls finally got their work done. Edith noticed her Duchess's excitement and asked if she was expecting someone. Suddenly, Liz jumped into the convo. She told Jocelyn in a cheerful tone that Madame Edith had no clue, after which Liz told Edith the Duchess had recently called the tailors. The girl was shook. Then she wondered if that scene was even in the original story. Suddenly a servant burst into the room telling the Duchess the Royal Workshop tailors had already arrived and were waiting for her in the parlor. Jocelyn got hyped hearing this and turned to the girls, asking them to wrap up their stuff and roll with her to the parlor. At that moment, Edith obediently accepted her husband's mom's proposal, thinking maybe she'd remember that scene from the book when she was in it. A few minutes later, the Duchess was sitting on the couch flipping through the catalog the artisans brought along, thinking how the older she gets, the more she picks designs like this. Next to Duchess Jocelyn, young Liz and Edith, who finally remembered a scene from the book, were browsing the catalog. Suddenly the woman turned to the girls, smiled, and asked them to help pick a design. Hearing that, Edith got a little worried because she didn't get why they were asked to do that. Then she told herself the Duchess would probably like Liz's pick better. Meanwhile, Liz smiled hearing this and asked the Duchess if they could really do that. In the end, Edith chilled because she realized the choice's outcome was already decided, since even if you forget Liz was the main protagonist of the story, she could understand the Duchess's tastes anyway, since she'd lived on her estate for 5 years. Suddenly cheerful, Liz exclaimed she was done with the choice, which confused Edith, who was still thinking about the outfit. At the same time, recap Manhwa, young Liz pointed at the dress picture and told the Duchess that in her opinion, this silk dress would perfectly highlight her femininity and beauty. The artisan told the girl her choice was excellent and added that this particular dress was the latest design and made from the highest quality silk. Seeing all this, Edith got worried because she realized Liz had picked the best option among all the dresses. Then the girl thought about the fact that since Duchess Jocelyn has pretty fair skin, this dress would suit her face well, especially since the blue color really made the Duchess's amber eyes pop. At that moment, Jocelyn turned to thoughtful Edith and asked if she liked everything. Among all the options, the girl awkwardly said it was hard to choose because the dress Liz picked was pretty nice in her opinion. But she still showed the Duchess her choice, adding that if she wanted something new, this dress would be perfect. Taking the catalog in her hands, Jocelyn looked at Edith's option and was shook. Meanwhile, Edith happily told her Duchess she thought the style would suit a woman who wanted to switch up her mood a bit these days. Jocelyn told the girl she had pretty sharp taste, because in her opinion few people could appreciate the combo of those colors. Edith didn't say anything to the Duchess, but thought that to a 21st century eye that design would be perfect on the Duchess. In the end, the Duchess thought about the choice and asked the girls if it wouldn't be too flashy for her. Those words didn't surprise Edith since she expected that answer, but still the girl understood that the older someone gets, the more luxed up they got a dress to look their absolute best. After all, Edith told herself, she wasn't planning to win this showdown with Liz. Instead, she was just gathering strength to take her down. One time, the main character of the story suddenly started hyping up the Duchess in every way possible, stressing that she'd totally slay in this dress because she's got beauty and class. Of course, those words made the woman happy, and she told the girl she'd trust her taste this time. Then she turned to the tailor and ordered 2 dresses before looking at Lisa, and said it was her turn to pick out a dress too, which totally caught the girl off guard. She wasn't expecting that at all, and honestly she felt pretty awkward about it, saying she didn't need anything, arguing she already had enough different dresses. But the girl's words didn't stop the Duchess, who kept flipping through the catalog, looking for a dress that would suit Lisa, and after a few seconds she found it. The woman liked the floral print dress, because in her opinion that dress looked like it was made just for girls like her right then. Edith also made her pick because she liked the pink dress, but still, she said it doesn't look good on everyone, after which the girl said since Lisa has pale skin and rosy cheeks, then that dress is totally her vibe and would look pretty good on her. Seeing the girl's choice, the Duchess told her she had pretty good taste, then asked Edith what she thought about a white empire dress. While young Liz kept insisting she didn't need anything, but no one paid attention to the girl's words, and Edith and Jocelyn kept picking different options. Meanwhile, the tailor jotted down the dress models the women liked on a piece of paper, and after a few minutes the Duchess turned to the seamstress and told her they decided to settle on 5 dresses at the same time. Edith noticed it was pretty tough to choose between the models, and suddenly the Duchess realized that while picking dresses for Liz, they hadn't chosen anything for Edith, so she offered the girl to pick whatever she wanted. The girl said she didn't need new dresses, saying that she asked the seamstress if they accepted dresses for recycling, and the woman smiled and said yes to the girl. After hearing that, Edith got super happy, but still the woman decided to ask what she meant by recycling. Right then, the girl said she had several dresses she wanted to entrust. Then she went to her maid, Anna, and asked her to bring the dress she had in mind. She understood that one of the survival rules in the novel about resettling a thief was creating an opposite image. When the maid brought the dress, Edith asked the seamstress to remove all valuables from the dresses and also to close up everything in the chest area, reasoning that the deep neckline was super uncomfortable for her. Taking the dress in her hands, the seamstress turned to the girl and said it was like her taste in clothes had changed a lot. After hearing that, Edith smiled genuinely and said that was exactly the case. Then she went on to tell the seamstress exactly what she wanted her to do while the Duchess and young Liz watched wondering. After a while, Edith walked down the hall happy to be done with it, thinking about how much it would cost to collect all the diamond beads from the dress. After that, she told herself she'd keep building tight bonds with the Duchess, so she decided to call her mom until suddenly her thoughts vanished. Because at that exact moment, the girl saw her husband Kylian standing near her room. This shocked her a lot because she knew he couldn't just be hanging around her room for no reason. Finally, Edith decided to ask the man what was up, but before she could finish the thought, Kylian ordered her to follow him, then told his wife that Liz wanted to invite her for tea. After all, Kylian himself wasn't happy with Liz's actions. The info surprised Edith and she wondered if there was... The info shocked Edith, after which she wondered if there was such an episode in the original story where Edith was invited to a tea party. However, she decided she'd definitely remember it. When she came to the tea party following her husband, the girl thought it was most likely that Liz had asked her to go to her room. At the same time, she thought to herself that Kylian looked handsome, even from behind, because she liked the guy's pumped-up shoulders and narrow waist. After all, Edith thought to herself, this was the first time her heart shook seeing a guy's body out of nowhere. The boy turned to her, and at that exact moment she quickly looked away and blushed hard, then wondered if the boy had caught how she was checking him out. Finally, Kylian turned back to Edith and told her he was warning her straight up to watch what she said around Lace. What she heard threw the girl off. Suddenly, the guy kept going, saying that Lisa was more important to him than his own wife because the young beauty was like family to him. Gathering her thoughts, the girl turned to her husband and said his words hurt a lot, which shocked Kylian. So he decided to ask Edith if there was something that could hurt her. In response, she told him she was human too, to which the boy asked if she was definitely human and not a snake. Edith was pretty impressed by what was said, but still told the boy he was very polite, then asked if she should talk to Lady Liz. According to the Duke's son's manners, then she gathered courage and told Kylian she felt like he was trying to ruin her mood and make her look like a horrible woman, before adding that unfortunately for him, she wasn't someone who could be easily influenced. The speech shocked the boy, but the girl didn't stop and told Kylian hurting her was a whole different story. Then she walked away proudly while the confused boy just stared. After a few minutes, the young beauty Lace saw Edith and then smiled genuinely and invited Edith to join them ASAP. At this, the girl smiled and thanked her for the invite. Suddenly, Cliff came up to Edith and said he thought the girl was getting used to life on the estate, then asked if she was taking on too much work. After all, he asked if she should go on a trip with her husband. Kylian and Cliff reasoned that Edith had just gotten married. At this, the girl smiled and said her husband was pretty busy. Meanwhile, she totally understood that Cliff wanted to send Kylian with her to look after Lisa. Suddenly, Kylian turned to his brother and then asked if now was a good time to explore their lands, adding that winter had been over for a while. At this, Cliff thought and told his brother what he said made sense. At the same time, the guy turned to young Lisa and then asked if she wanted to go with him. Then added that once she told him she wanted to go on a trip. The girl was surprised by this, because she didn't know what to say. Next, Kylian suddenly jumped into the convo pissed off, and asked his brother why he was putting the girl in an awkward spot. Then he turned to Lisa herself, and told her not to pay attention to what his brother said. At this, Cliff was surprised, then told his brother that Lisa was probably feeling awkward when he wasn't around her, to which Ivy agreed mentally. After all, this trio was like good siblings. But Edith totally got what would happen if Cliff left. From the outside, it would look like these two had a romantic thing going on, so bad rumors about the charming Liz would be inevitable. Finally, Edith looked at Cliff, then thought the reason the boy's mindset was pretty different from others might be because he was the main character of the whole thing. At that same moment, the boy seemed to hear Edith's thoughts, then abruptly looked back at her and asked what she was thinking. From this, the girl felt like she got scalded with boiling water because she suddenly scattered her thoughts and then decided to ask Cliff what he meant. The girl felt scalded like with boiling water because suddenly she scattered her thoughts and then decided to ask Cliff what he meant. The kid smiled at this and asked for her opinion that he'd be the only one leaving this property. Then he asked Edith to comment on the situation between her brother Kylian, and the beautiful Liz. Hearing this, the girl frowned and thought that question coming from Cliff's lips was way too bold. After that, she looked at the boy and told herself she understood she wasn't in a position to count on love. Still, she thought it was straight up too much to act so shameless in the end. Edith closed her eyes and calmly told the kid she didn't care, but then suddenly wondered if none of the family members had any manners after hearing that kind of answer. Cliff was already confused because he didn't think things would go down like this, and meanwhile Kylian, without saying a word, just sat there, and suddenly Edith told the kid it was his duty as the first heir of the duchy to take care of his land, so he had no right to force him to go, or else she was mentally mocking him. Then a confused Cliff said he didn't mean it like that, but the girl ignored his words. She said that for now, the trip for young Lisa would be a pretty tough task in her opinion. Then Edith smiled and told Cliff that such a long carriage ride was pretty rough, especially for a fragile girl. After that, she cynically said Lady Lisa wasn't his wife at that moment, so in her opinion it'd be heavy to ask a girl something like that. Suddenly Edith turned her attention to Lisa, who was sitting beside her, and saw she was deep in thought, which surprised Edith. Then the young beauty turned to Cliff and shyly asked if he needed to go inspect the duchy lands right now. Meanwhile, the girl looked at the young beauty and mentally wondered if she thought the blonde was acting out of line, but still, she understood she had to deal with a whole different character at the same time. Cliff said with an air of arrogance that those were just words, arguing his daughter-in-law had a pretty generous heart. Hours passed. It was getting dark, and meanwhile Kylian decided to step outside to clear his head a bit. At the same time, he thought about the morning situation, meaning his brother's words, who said his daughter-in-law had a generous heart, and also Edith's own response, who said with a smile that she always tries to show kindness. Suddenly his train of thought was interrupted by young Lisa, who, stepping onto the terrace, decided to ask what he was doing out there so late. Kylian was surprised to see the girl, and seeing his reaction, the young beauty got scared, then decided to ask if something bad had happened. Finally, Kylian looked at her and smiled, then told her everything was fine and she didn't need to worry. Suddenly he changed the subject and asked about the new dresses they ordered today, then added that his mom liked dressing the girl in new clothes. To that, Liz said she always felt guilty when the Duchess bought her so many dresses. Hearing that, Kylian smiled and told her not to feel guilty because his mom was always jealous of families with daughters, since she herself wanted a daughter. Then he said everyone should be grateful to her because she cares a lot about her mom. Hearing this, young Liz blushed a bit at such praise. It turned out the Duchess Jocelyn's husband and sons were raised like true gentlemen, so the woman felt pretty lonely. Suddenly the young beauty lowered her head and said that in her opinion, buying dresses for Edith could make the Duchess even happier. Hearing this, Kylian asked why she thought that. Liz replied that last time Edith didn't pick a single dress, which impressed the guy quite a bit. However, the young beauty continued and said Edith simply decided to redo the dresses she brought with her. Plus, she helped the Duchess choose clothes, which impressed Kylian even more. At the same time, he wondered if what he'd heard really described the same Edith Rigelhoff who never wore the same dress twice. Suddenly, the kid got mad, saying Edith's behavior could only mean she was disgusted to buy a dress there, and he also asked Lisa if it was okay to buy a dress for her mom and for herself there. After hearing this, the young beauty went into a daze. And then he told Kylian that Edith really didn't mean any of that at the same time. The guy said he was surprised the girl didn't like this workshop, but at the wedding she wore a super trashy dress. Then he added that for some reason Edith suddenly started wearing modest clothes, after which Kylian said surprisingly, she didn't hit him that hard today, and in the end he concluded that when Edith shows her true self, everything becomes obvious because this girl is straight up vulgar and nasty suddenly before the boy could prove his point. His head started hurting badly from all those memories. Liz also saw that Kylian was pretty sick, but still didn't know what to do next. However, she decided to ask the boy if he still hated recap manhwa, Edith that much, and the boy looked at her, then calmly said Edith is like a snake. Then he went on saying she was lying on the floor at that moment. But when everyone let their guard down, she showed her teeth, which pissed off Lisa because she couldn't get how he could say that. After all, Kylian thought sooner or later his wife would ask to find her another workshop that could still satisfy her tastes and needs, so the Ludwig family would have no choice but to give in to her whims. To preserve their rep, meanwhile, in Edith's room, the maid arrived, Anna, who came to tell her lady that her perfume and blush were almost out, after which the maid asked if she needed to call the perfumer and cosmetics merchant. After hearing about the cosmetics, the girl went into a daze, then realized the cosmetics wouldn't restock themselves, so she'd have to spend her own money to buy them. It turned out that in the original story, Edith's financial situation was pretty unstable, so to avoid the original Edith's mistakes, the girl decided to save money to be ready for a situation where they would come for sure. The other day, she even asked to remove the diamond beads from the dresses when sending them for processing, but still those beads haven't been exchanged for money yet. At the same time, the girl thought that since Edith is an aristocrat, she should buy luxury items like perfumes and cosmetics. It turned out the girl spent her whole past life saving and saving money, so she didn't know how to spend it because for her it was a luxury. To paint her lips with lipstick smudged and hidden in the bathroom. In the end, she thought maybe the reason behind her actions was that she didn't want anyone to know she wasn't loved. Then she told herself that since she was reborn as someone else now, she wanted to try enjoying all the pleasures of life in this novel, and so the girl, smiling, asked her maid to after all call the perfumer. A few minutes later, several perfume bottles were already on Edith's room table. Suddenly the girl went silent. Because she was shocked by what she heard, it turned out a few minutes earlier, a perfumer had come to her room who, smelling a piece of paper with perfume on it, said it was the best scent of Ashley Rose then. Added that this the same style young girls choose. Meanwhile, Edith and her maid Anna listened carefully to everything the man was telling them. Finally, the perfumer talked about another perfume that has a refreshing herbal scent with a light note of Ashley and a touch of strawberry and grey amber herbal. Said that the man informed Edith that if she wanted, he could recreate an almost identical scent to this, then asked for a solution. To which the girl asked how much its perfume equivalent would cost roughly at the same time. The perfumer told her a bottle the size Edith had would cost about 90.000 sen. Hearing that made the girl go into a daze and even almost pass out. At that moment, Edith thought it was about 901,001 Korean won, which was more than double her food expenses in a month of her past life. 901,000 Korean won, which was more than double her food expenses in a month from her past life. Meanwhile, the maid Anna saw her lover's state but didn't know what to do. In the end, the perfumer offered Edith an alternative. It turned out the most used variety is the Titania Rose family because it's richer and longer lasting. Then the man added that this is the first thing to keep in mind about the Royan fragrance. Lastly, the husband claimed that the scent of this type of perfume is too strong for girls. At the same time, Edith thought about her past life and a similar situation she'd had. Meanwhile, the perfumer was telling her that he thought she should go with the Ashley variety, because it was the same perfume she used before, or if not, if she didn't want that, he'd recommend she take a perfume from the Rose Thesis or Nathaniel varieties. Next, the guy said that the same volume of this perfume would cost around 200.000 sen, but the scent of this perfume would be more luxurious and deeper than the Ashley Rose variety. Hearing this, the girl was shocked, because she didn't get how 100 milliliters of perfume could cost more than 2 million wons. Still, Edith just smiled and told the perfumer she'd rather stick with her favorite version, arguing that a sudden perfume change would look weird.